Hey Ellis, Cris from ASG here, and I'll be giving you some feedback today. So first I'd like to say thank you for sending in the video, and there's a lot of good things happening in the video. You're playing the 996 Prelude by Bach. I have the music here by chance. And there's a lot of good things, a lot of good ornamentation, your hands are working well, and you had written about your left hand giving you some trouble. So what I identified in this video so far was that your thumb, your left hand thumb, is really peeking over the guitar neck a lot. And so we have to remind ourselves to keep our thumb sort of behind the neck, right? Following the hand. And another thing to note that I'll talk about in a second is how in the first position our fingers, well, our hand is just sort of slightly turned to the left naturally, because that's kind of what happens in the first and second position. So now let's take a quick look at what I am talking about, okay? So now, like right here, in this very first still of the video, your hand is already slightly to the left, right? So it's slightly angled. So I'm going to exaggerate here, like that. Okay, so you had mentioned in what you wrote about not being parallel to the fretboard, and so that's great. You're already, aware of the issue. So now, how can we work on this? And the simplest way is to sort of just focus on one thing at a time for a couple minutes. And every guitarist does this, whether they're professional, an amateur, hobbyist, it doesn't really matter. Some of these ideas that I'm about to talk about, I got from people like David Russell, for example. So in the first place, we want to work on keeping our hand parallel to the fretboard because it lets our fingers move efficiently, okay? Instead of all the fingers coming from different angles, from different places away from the fretboard, they're all sort of evenly placed where they could just launch and play a note whenever you need it. So now, very quick revisiting of the fundamentals is the hand shape, right? We want to keep a nice curve in our fingers, our thumb behind the neck, moving with the hand. What does that mean? So, right here I'm moving horizontally on the fretboard. I like to use the terms vertical and horizontal, right? So vertical is up and down, horizontal is side to side here. So now, I'm going to be at the 7th fret because it's much easier to keep your hand sort of parallel to the fretboard here than it is the first position because you have that natural angle that I mentioned earlier. So at the 7th fret, we want our fingers to be curved. So we want some space right here between the palm and the fretboard. And we're just going to think about one thing, right? We're just going to think about keeping our fingers parallel to the fretboard. And then we're going to start this exercise and we're going to add another thing, which is having our thumb, our left hand thumb, move with the hand. Just sort of following. You don't have to actively think too much about, I have to move the thumb here, I have to move the thumb there. No, because we want it to sort of become a unconscious habit. And that's what it takes time to build up to this sort of thing. So we want to focus on just very simple things for a couple minutes at a time. And I do this every single day. Every single day that I practice, I do this. I warm up with this. So now, what does this mean before I jump into things? So when our thumb follows our hand, here I am at the 6th fret, right? And you see my thumb is poking a little bit here? Well, I've got to be aware of that. I need to make sure it's a little bit lower so that I have my palm a little bit away from the fretboard. And now I'm going to move it all the way to the 3rd string, right? And my thumb is sort of just going to follow behind there. I'm not using any strength. It's just sort of a small adjustment in the thumb. And now I'm going to go to the first string. And now my thumb is a little bit higher here on the fretboard. So now I'm going to show you this from behind the neck, right? So how to be aware of this. So now here, I'm going to move to the 5th fret so you can see a little bit clearer. Here I am on the 6th string. And my thumb is a little bit high. And we just want it to follow as our hand goes vertically up. Well, down in this case, to the 1st string, right? Like here we're at the 6th string, here we are at the 1st string. Just a very simple movement. Now, of course, it's not like this. So now, if I'm playing a simple exercise, just like a chromatic 1, 2, 3, 4, I started here, and now my thumb is here. And so making sure that my thumb moves with the hand is going to help keep your hand parallel to the fretboard. Okay? So now, the other issue here with all of this is the first position. The first and second position, it's very easy because it's very easy to get a little bit tripped up there because we have this long sort of, well, not long, you have a slight tilt in the hand, right? And so what I noticed in moments of your playing, let me make myself smaller here, is that your hand would get a little bit too far from the neck. So let's just jump around here to a moment. Let's see. See, like right here. Right here, we're at the first fret. Your thumb is very high up behind the neck, and your first 2-3 fingers are kind of struggling to play in that position, right? So let's take a look at this real quick. So look, if my thumb is way up here in the first position, my fingers are really going to struggle to play there. That's just a fact because it's impossible, especially if I have my palm here touching the fretboard. If I push my thumb a little bit away, that already makes things a little bit better. So what do we do in the first position? We just have to just be aware of this and we have to make small adjustments, right? So now, what I suggest here is just the same exercise that we just did on the 7th and the 5th fret, but just do it the first fret and be aware of slowly having the thumb follow the fingers, okay? So right now, I sort of have a wide spread in my hands, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 frets cover the first position, and I have my palm here away from the guitar. And just to show the difference between here, between this and the position that you're in currently in the video, this is your positioning, sort of. I'm exaggerating a little bit, right there. And what we want is just a little bit more space there so that our fingers can move, right? So let's just do this exercise right here in the first position where my thumb is going to follow doing this chromatic exercise. It's going to follow the fingers. See here? I still have a nice curve in the fingers. Plenty of space for my fingers to move, away from the fretboard and to move to the fretboard when we're playing notes. And I'm going to keep moving now, just to show. Now, it's tough in first position to get all the notes perfectly because it's much wider up here than it is at the top of the, what I call the stratosphere here. But at the end, my thumb has moved with my fingers and it's much lower. So now, just try this real quick. Put your first 4 fingers right here in the first 4 frets, in the first position, and put your thumb under, down here, lower up behind the neck. And then, try to put it way down here at the 6th string. You have this automatic adjustment of all the fingers. So we want to have this sort of position all over the neck. So now going back to a fundamental thing about our left hand stance or positioning, you want to have this nice curve in the fingers and the thumb following the fingers. So if you could just do this, you're already going to be able to move around the neck. And what does this mean? This means that the thumb can follow the fingers, right? So the thumb is just with the least amount of tension, ideally no tension. Our thumb is just following the fingers around the neck, right? And this is something that trips up a lot of guitarists. And again, I have to remind myself of this every day that I pick up the guitar. I warm up with this exercise, keeping this in mind all the time. And that's it pretty much to the left hand. That should help. Experiment with that. So just a quick recap is to try and practice this right here around the 7th position because the space between the frets is smaller. So you're going to go up and down like this and just making sure the thumb is following the fingers. Now, if you're doing an exercise, a chromatic exercise, it's just to keep it simple so that you don't have to think too much about what your fingers are doing. Just very simply 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Making sure that the thumb is following the fingers. Right? And then you do the same thing back. Very simply. You could just do it all with your thumb or just alternate I and M for that. And that's a pretty good recap for the left hand. Again, it's just when the thumb is really high behind the neck, that's going to give us problems. And just remember, you want to have a nice curve in the fingers as you go up and down the neck. If you can't do this smoothly, going horizontally and vertically, it's going to be very tough for your fingers to play efficiently on the fretboard. Okay, so now, that's it for the left hand. So now for the right hand, let's just take a look at what's going on here. Okay, so here we go. So when we are playing the classical guitar with classical guitar technique and everything, our aim is to get a full rich sound, you know, and that involves closing the hand fully, right? And making sure that we're going from these top knuckle joints and that we're putting energy into the string. So let me demonstrate. Right here. So very simply, I have my thumb on the 4th string and, you know, I, M, and A on the top 3 strings, right? So now, what I noticed in the video is that you are doing a lot of movements from the tip joint here, the middle joint, and you're not really going from the big knuckle. Now, you do get it sometimes. It's just that when we're playing difficult music, we sort of forget to watch out for these things. So just take a moment to, in your warm-up, to just go like this, making sure every single finger is playing from the top knuckle joint, right? And you're playing all the way into the palm. You're putting the energy into the string and making sure you're touching the palm. Now we're just exaggerating here. And then with all 3 fingers at the same time, like that, right? Now this seems very basic, but we tend to forget about this as we're doing, as we're working on a lot of repertoire, as we're playing more and more complex pieces. But it's really essential to go back to these. And David Russell, one of my favorite guitarists, he starts a lot of his own warm-ups by just doing open strings, like this. 1 string at a time. Making sure that you're playing where the nail and the flesh meet, and then the energy goes into the string, and you can touch your palm. This is going to give you the best sound. So now, I'm demonstrating this because there are moments where the sound gets a little bit thin, and I can tell that you're moving more from the middle joint than from the top knuckle joint. Let's take a look again. See, right here you're moving more from the tip joint, well, the middle joint here, than you are from the top knuckle joint. Let's take another look at that. See, one more time. Yeah, and then, so once again, it's a lot of movement coming from the middle joints here. You want it to come from the top knuckle joint. That's going to give you the most full and rich sound for classical guitar. Okay, so just one more demonstration here. So now, because I have the music here, I can demonstrate this, just the first measure or so. Okay, let me do that one more time. And notice how I'm moving from the top knuckle here. Right? So now I'm gonna exaggerate it a little bit more this time. do it from a different angle. And so notice how I'm going from the top knuckle joint here. Right? And if I keep going, okay. All right, so that's set up. I was just a little sight reading right there. So remember to move from the top knuckle joint here, okay? Because that's going to be really the crux of things. It's going to help your tone sound more full and more rich. And let's go back to the video here. Yeah, so for like example, right there, where you were just plucking the chords here, let me demonstrate real quick. So right here where you're plucking these chords, I'm gonna do it slowly. And if you're doing it with I, M, and A, and I'm moving from the top knuckle joint here, okay? I'm not moving from the middle joint here because the sound is very different. Whoops, sorry. It's a very different sound right there. Okay, so that should really be, I think if you apply these two things for the left hand and the right hand, keep making sure you're aware of the thumb in the left hand and the fullness of the plucking from the top joint here for the right hand, I think that'll really help you playing this piece and your other repertoire as well. So just from about there, I think I'll actually leave it there. And please let me know if you have any questions. And it was awesome to work with you. And thanks again. And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.